Mother takes picture of daughter, but screams in terror at the close-up and calls the police immediately. We all appreciate the magic of photography and relish the opportunity to capture some of our most joyful and memorable moments. However, for one Arizona family, the snapshot they took of great joy and the priceless moment ended up being more than just an important memento. But it was actually a terrifying emergency that could have resulted in tragedy. It was a special day for this happy family in Auburn, Arizona, but one of happiness and excitement. We're certainly not anticipating any sort of disaster. Because for one 13-year-old girl named Bailey, it was her first day of 7th grade, and she was filled with excitement about the day to come. And of course, her mother was excited too. But they had no idea that their excitement was about to turn to panic. In order to preserve this lovely moment for all time, her mother decided to take a picture of her before she left to start her new year at school. When Bailey was all dressed up and ready to go to school, she smiled for the camera. Little did they know the photo would be the beginning of a terrifying ordeal. However, it was a family tradition to take a new photo every time Bailey began a new school year. As Bailey and her parents got ready for their yearly photo, there was more to celebrate this time than just simply the commencement of a new school year. Because this was also the first time that they were taking the photo in their new house. Now that they lived in a suburban house with a sprawling front lawn, Bailey decided she wanted to take the photo outdoors in the garden this year. As well as her loving and happy family, Bailey was also a much admired and popular member of her class at school. And so, many students and teachers alike were quick to notice on that first day that Bailey had not turned up. When she didn't turn up, it was immediately noticeable to everyone that she had left an empty space in the classroom. But when Bailey's best friend came running over, panic written all over her face, it was clear that something truly terrible had befallen her. Not only was Bailey missing from the first day of the school year, something that had never happened before. As the news of Bailey's disaster spread throughout the school, more and more of her friends, teachers, and classmates were hurrying to open their phones and look at the photo on Instagram that revealed what truly had happened. Each one scrolled along and looked at Bailey's Insta feed, their mouths dropped open in surprise. No wonder Bailey had not made it to school. In fact, she was lucky to be alive after all. As the truth of what had happened to Bailey was slowly revealed to her classmates, she and her mother were still at home absorbing the storm of the unexpected incident. Straight after taking the photo, Bailey's mother saw a slight movement in the background behind her. And it was only after she took a closer look at the picture that she realized, with horror, what it really was. The truth had finally been revealed to both Bailey and her mother. Because right behind the beautiful shot of Bailey was a lovely and statuesque tree. But the tree's detailed and gorgeous bark pattern was actually concealing something incredibly unexpected. Hidden right there, right next to Bailey behind her in the photo, was none other than an enormous snake. Neither of them had realized the terrifying creature was there, but the truth was that they still didn't realize the true extent of the threat they were in. Even though Bailey's mother was obviously incredibly terrified, she knew that she couldn't afford to panic. After all, her daughter's safety was at stake, and she had to stay calm and think quickly in order to get her out of threat. As Bailey's mother tried her hardest to stay calm and simply get Bailey away from the snake as quickly as possible. Fortunately, she did listen to her mother's warnings, and without panicking or accidentally touching the snake, she darted over to her mother and was out of harm's way. Once they had safely stepped away from the snake, Bailey and her mother knew that they were still not completely out of threat. As quickly as possible, they got away from the tree and ran back inside the house. as Bailey and her mother tried to recover from the terrifying incident and fear of coming face to face with such a snake. The truth was actually even more scary than they realized, because the snake that had been on the tree was only inches away. It was a rattlesnake. Bailey and her mother were even more shaken and horrified to realize that this wasn't just a terrifying animal encounter. Rattlesnakes are one of the most threatening snakes of all, and a bite from a rattlesnake can take one's life quickly. If one gets bitten by a rattlesnake, the antidote to the poison must be administered right away, to even have a chance at surviving the terrible strike. Just a few minutes more, or perhaps even seconds, and the poisonous vicious snake might have struck out at her in one fell swoop. However, this actually wasn't Bailey's first encounter with a slippery serpent. The truth was, Bailey had quite a history with snakes going as far back as her early childhood. As a tiny tot, the young Bailey had once in fact been bitten by a snake. Though she obviously survived, she was left with a true terror of snakes. It was of course a rattlesnake, one of the most vicious members of all the snake kingdom. So, after realizing the true extent of the threat she had escaped, she was completely panic-stricken. Without wasting time, Bailey's mother called animal control to try and deal with the snake, as they sheltered inside. They waited for animal control to show up and hopefully take care of the situation. Sure enough, they turned up pretty quickly, but there was one big problem. Because the huge and terrifying snake was no longer on the tree and no one had any idea where it had gone. Not only had they only narrowly escaped after coming incredibly up close and personal with a rattlesnake, but it had now escaped and they had no idea where it had gone. Even though Bailey was terrified to leave the house, the truth was that for the moment, she was pretty safe in her house as the men from animal control remained outside and carried on looking for the dastardly snake. So, while she was in there, she began looking at her phone again and was able to look at the picture without such terror. Soon she decided to share the terrifying but incredible photo on her Instagram page. Within just a few minutes, she received incredible numbers of likes and comments on the post. It wasn't surprising, considering how astonishing the photo really was. The men from animal control worked long and hard to try and find the dastardly creature, and at one point everyone couldn't help but wonder. Finally, the snake was been caught, and it was once again safe for them both to venture outside and for Bailey to head off to school.